Hi guys, welcome to this next episode of Ashley's Digital China. Today I'm bringing you Aaron Chang, who is the founder and CEO of JINGdigital, one of China's leading marketing automation companies working with B2B sector in particular. Aaron, fantastic to have you on the show.
Hey Ashley, great to be here.
Aaron, let's start with looking into your journey in China. You've been in the market for a very long time, and you've actually started with some software development and outsourcing shops, and then you moved on to work in the TP space and e-commerce space, and finally landed in this automation platform and SaaS business. So where do you think this SaaS business is in China today? A lot of people think that China is very advanced in that space. Others say it's such a complex market that it's impossible to do business. So where are we right now based on your experience?
You know, that is a very insightful question because we do hear both the same thing about it, and it was surprisingly difficult to do a SaaS business in China. And SaaS businesses in China, my original assumption going back to 2014 when I started this, we started it because there was an opportunity. The opportunity was WeChat. WeChat official accounts and the open platform that it allowed was something really unique. It allowed real-time connection with customers through chat, which was at that time was not available anywhere else in the world. So we figured this was a great opportunity to try to build a marketing automation platform, especially because brands were investing in official accounts, investing in social media more and more, and that channel was WeChat, and the global platforms had no solution for that. So that was our in to starting a SaaS platform. And coming from America and following Silicon Valley and the great SaaS platforms there, we tried to do a very, deep, focused, best of breed. We're going to take this little chunk WeChat and then put it together with all sorts of other SaaS platforms. That totally did not work. So in China, and for multiple reasons, one of which is, I think that the biggest one is the sophistication or just the maturity of the marketing teams here. They are growing, they're intelligent, very entrepreneurial, but they don't have the deep experience, and they don't actually, marketing teams here don't have the size actually that I think a lot of teams have in the West. So they tend to be, even for big brands, the marketing teams are very small. So they don't literally have the experience or the time to put together a best of breed solution, SaaS solution, the way that is typically done in the West. So that has led to a need to create an all-in-one solution, which means that it's a much bigger investment. And also with the fact that the customers are still developing, that it typically involves a higher layer of service than you usually have to do in the West. So true product-led growth is much more difficult here in China. And so we've continually sort of trying to thread that needle. So we're doing pretty well in our space. In terms of our space, we're one of the leaders in terms of having 85% of our revenue coming from subscription revenue versus service. So we are doing the best we can, but it definitely is challenging. That is a difference that from the global situation, and the support from the investment community has gone very much up and down. It's a little bit down right now in terms of view of software. So that obviously a lot of the interest and excitement is around AI, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which also I'm very excited about, and then new energy. Those are the two spaces that are really hot right now in China.
This is very interesting recount. So the markets are different, and it's a lot more difficult to do even this business, right? It's just a lot more servicing, a lot more education, and a lot more really carving out the market for yourself, right? As a SaaS provider, and also difficult to scale in so many ways. You primarily serve at this moment B2B businesses. Right. In your view, what are the biggest challenges they are facing when they enter China and they start prospecting, engaging their customers, building loyalty? all these problems that you help them to also solve?
Yeah, I think because we focused on with being a marketing automation platform, most of our customers are marketing teams. So the marketing teams, when there's a couple of issues that we see a lot when brands, particularly larger corporates, start entering China. They have been fairly successful controlling a lot of the marketing tools and the marketing strategies from fairly centralized IT and marketing functions, global marketing functions. Because you can use, in pretty much the rest of the world, you can use the same platform. If you're on, say you're using Salesforce for your CRM and you're using either Marketing Cloud, or maybe you're using Marketo for your marketing automation platform, that can pretty much be rolled out around the rest of the world, except for China. And so that's the first area that everyone marketing teams run into when they come into China, is the realization that, they realize it very, very quickly, because the teams that they're hiring in China bring in the knowledge, the local knowledge. So they already are telling the local MD or GM that the same tools aren't going to work in China, and they won't use them because it doesn't make any sense for here. But getting that communicated and buy-in from the global, particularly if it's a very top-down control corporate, that's probably the first challenge, is again the education of understanding what are the channels and what are the ways that you need to connect with your prospects, your leads, your customers, your accounts. And it comes down to, again, the first area and the simplest way, and what we still, after all these years, we still explain, is just the preference for communication channel, is that WeChat and chat continues to be the preferred way that most people communicate. Like when we take an example of a SDR, phone sales team, a lot of the times the way they work is they call them up, it's an incoming lead, they talk to them for literally 1 minute, with the whole goal of just being add WeChat to continue the conversation on chat. And then the conversation will continue on chat. Because it's more convenient, it's less pressure, and it's a little bit more asynchronous. And so that, plus it's, once you have that connection, it's much easier to talk to people on WeChat and keep that ongoing, because a lot of the lead sales cycles are very long. So you want to have a way that's not so intrusive and annoying as calling them on the phone every time. Or, we get emails. Emails are still useful, and they're the official channel for sending contracts, final confirmations. All of this is the same in China, but everything up until that final official confirmation is done on WeChat. And that brings in WeCom, WeChat Work, the other channel which people aren't aware of typically overseas. And that channel is also important if you want to try to make things a little bit more official looking. But there are security and data security challenges and information challenges that some companies have problems with that. So it is that all of these complexities come to the front. The other areas of it are also sort of, in terms of media channels and sort of advertising, keyword advertising, the theory is pretty much the same. One of the primary channels is going to be SEM, but it's going to happen through Baidu. It's instead of Google. It's pretty much the same. But I think one of the things that's probably a little bit shocking to people is that it's in most cases, Baidu is, and for a lot of industries, is more expensive than Google. So it's a big if you're coming in and starting to do lead generation, it's not going to be cheap. So it is
and there's also a lot of regulations, right? It's not that you can just load your cash onto Baidu and start advertising, right? If you fall into certain categories, then you need to get pre-approvals. You need to make sure that you are compliant. your advertising also takes time to get approved, right? Especially if you're running it for the first time. So all that exists. And for our audience that is just now getting acquainted, what is the difference then between running, as you said, lead cycle and communication on WeChat and then looping WeCom? So what is the difference?
Yeah, that's an very important question. So in terms of user experience, so the customer experience, it's pretty much exactly the same because they scan a QR code or they add a phone number and then they are connected to your sales team. But it's a little, the name has a little orange thing behind it saying the company. So it's basically a verified identity that you're working with someone in the company, which, to be honest, most people don't really pay attention to. But from the other side, it's important because it's a different app. So it's, instead of using the green normal WeChat app, it's a blue app, and it is controlled entirely by the company. So your admin team will add in, your HR team will add in all of your teammates according to the organizational structure, and then it invites them in, and then they have access to it. And the great benefit of WeCom is, number one, it's as if Slack and WhatsApp and were all seamlessly connected together. Well, not seamlessly, but mostly seamlessly. Because WeCom has the ability to basically transfer contacts. That's the biggest one. So as a company, your salesperson leaves. If he's in private, if he's been chatting through private the whole time, then he leaves, he takes the contacts with him, and then the person who's replacing him has to reconnect to all those people. But if you're using WeCom, you can reassign those contacts to the next salesperson, and then they can just continue to engage with them. So that is the biggest, it's official, it is, you can transfer contacts. And also in terms of, for more customer service focused roles, you can turn on chat logging. So it's a small fee. I believe it's something like 200 renminbi. No, I think it's like 20 renminbi. I have to get back to you on that. It's something like 20 to 200 renminbi per year to get all the chat logs for a team member. And that, it gives you, again, when you're doing analysis, particularly, this is one of the big opportunities when you're doing AI and big data analysis strategies, then this gives you a real-time view of what your team is saying and how they're communicating with customers, what's the customers, potentially their sentiment. All of these things can be got from WeCom. So we highly recommend it. Not all companies are able to use it because of their data security policies.
Tell us more about this data security policy. What's stopping companies from using this supercharged WeChat?
Well, a lot of companies, actually, technically, particularly when they're working in highly technical, advanced scientific areas, they're very sensitive about their internal IP, basically. And so, because it is, WeCom is obviously going through Tencent, and it's all of this information on their servers. They don't allow their internal team members to use this because of the sensitivity about, so particularly some of our semiconductor customers. They will probably never use it. Or, I think one approach is, because obviously your sales team is not dealing with the same level of sensitivity as your internal research and development team. So we do try to kind of wall off certain people, because perhaps they can be able to take advantage of it. Because from a marketing perspective, it's a huge advantage. And one of the other big advantages for the marketing teams, which I didn't mention up to now, is that it allows you to the marketing team can set up messages through the sales team. So you can do fairly personalized pushes, or, this week's, there's an event, there's a webinar going on, I want my sales team to send it out personally, one-to-one. You can queue those up, and these are called personal group send. and then it can be sent out through to segmented a group of users through this sales team. And all they have to do is they'll get a notification, they have to press one button saying send, and then it goes out through them. And messages that come through an individual are so much more, that the open and read rates are so much higher. It's usually 2 to 3 times. So instead of your normal WeChat post, which gets 5 at the best, 15% open rates, you're going to get 30 to 60%. So it's much, much higher. People feel a little guilty about it, ignoring a person who sends you a message, but when it comes to a message from an official account, it's okay, you can ignore it. So there's an advantage. This is one of the other advantages.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So personalized messages and sending from a real human always works best, right? It works the same way on, Western platforms. When it comes to LinkedIn, the opening rates of just some advertising, right, sponsored posts, when they are sent from the company or when they are sent from a person, it just times and times better. Let's look at what does it take for a foreign B2B company to actually succeed in China? Many of your clients are in this category. They are either in China for many years, and right now they are looking to streamline their operations, or some new B2B companies are tapping into this market. So is there a checklist? Who qualifies to be in China? What are the industries? What are the, the size? And what are the steps that companies typically need to take?
Yeah, so the key is not, I believe, is not that dissimilar from how it works in B2C. My friends back when I was doing some TP work, the biggest sign that your product has, and it's good to enter China, is that your product's already being sold and used here. It's that simple. If you look on Taobao and you search for your brand, well, this is not so much for B2B, but in B2C, if you search for the brand and there's people Daigou bringing your product in already, that's always a good sign. That's actually the best indicator. And the same is true for B2B, because most of the brands, or a lot of the brands we work with a lot of multinationals. They're category leaders. So they're whether they're someone like, we work with Zeiss, who does optical, both health technology products, and also obviously glasses, lenses. They're category leaders, so they've already been selling. They're already deep here, and so they've been here for 20 years already. So they're not. That's this, but the fact is that there's other kind of more niche products, like we worked recently. I met with a team that just does extruders for adhesives, and they just make the extruders. That's it, and they're fairly new to this market, but their product was already being used in manufacturing facilities all over China. So then they decided that since our product is already here, then we want to really try to push and grow the China market and try to expand our ability and adapt our products to the needs of the market on a more on a closer basis. So they made that jump and they invested in, so they've opened an office here. And so to me, the checklist is not that long, actually. It really is, what are your aspirations for the China market? Because increasingly, and we'll talk about this more, is that there is the element of China as the max manufacturing center for the world, although this is obviously being decreased as with all of the implications for what's happened over the last number of years. So because of de-risking, there's a lot of manufacturers who are splitting their manufacturing capabilities, increasingly moving it outside of China. But China for China continues to be a big trend. It's like, I forget who, a couple of people have said it, when you ask the question of who's in the developing economies and growth engines, who's the next China? China is the next China. So it still is a huge market long term. And so if you have aspirations, then it's better sooner than later to begin that process, because it is a long-term investment to play in China.
Mm. And how does the lead generation process for B2B businesses work in the country? Who does it right? Are there some cases of companies that came in, or maybe they just started doing something differently and they are succeeding? And who is doing it wrong?
Yeah, so in terms of lead generation, the funnel, the outline of the funnel looks it's the same. It's pretty much the same. Is that so you have the reach or awareness component of how do I get people to, and so that is being done. A lot of the reach is for B2B, because it is so targeted, you can't really do broad-based awareness campaigns. So then that's happening through search engine, through industry vertical media, through trade shows, conventions, and then content. So those are the main mechanisms, and that's very, very similar to outside. I think where it starts getting a little different is things like there's platforms for when you talk about more ABM, account-based marketing strategies and outbound strategies. There are platforms and in the West, like Demandbase or Sixth Sense, which give you the ability to, and they have databases of users, so you can actually do retargeting across, particularly even down to levels of companies and roles. And so they can help you to do retargeting, demand generation at a very discrete level that's fairly successful. That really doesn't exist in China. So we've had some of our customers really from a global level push this type of platform to try to invest, and they've tried using WeChat Moments, they've tried using more targeted ads through Tencent ads. It just has not been particularly successful. So in some ways, China, and so at that top of the funnel, if you're going to do outbound, it's very old school outbound in China still, call center. It really is. Get a call center, have people call people, try to get them to have their WeChat accounts and to continue down the funnel. So China is an interesting mix of very advanced and also very, very traditional practices. And so then after you get into the acquisition phase of it. So from the next part of the funnel, as we're trying to, get that contact, convert them from just a kind of a user or a guest into a lead, and then get them to be a marketing qualified lead. And so that process, that process it depends on your lead funnel. So we see teams who are, who actually have a lot of leads. And so then they are tending to go with a team of SDR team or a sales development reps, so a phone center to pre-qualify the leads so that they can save time for their sales teams. And so that really is a best practice if you have the lead flow, because it does really improve the quality and conversion rate of your lead flow. So we do suggest, if you have that at that stage, to go ahead and put in place that team, because it's going to make things a lot more efficient. And so, yeah, a number of other companies that we work with do use that, including ourselves. And then that gets you to that marketing qualified lead. The SDR team qualifies them, and then pretty much. And so the difference again between China is that in terms of the communication channel, as I mentioned above before, is that that SDR team is going to their primary goal is actually to get the chat connection, actually, and to start then chatting with people and then sharing information and getting them to be interested and to be able to hand off to the sales team. And that handoff, again, is typically through WeChat. So where they will pull a group, add in the sales person, and then the salesperson will personally add the person for a unique connection as well. But so that is one of the big differences, is that the flow, the contact flow. It's not, we might already have their email, but that's not really what we care about, because we're not going to be communicating them through their email for most of these things. So it's obviously it's the phone number first. That's the golden piece of information. And that's the unique, that is your universal unique identifier for China, for all marketing. Get the phone number and then hopefully leverage that to a WeChat connection, and then continue to deepen that connection, whether you're using WeCom or WeChat, to your other team members. That gets, and then you get into the conversion. Conversion with the sales team is very similar. Again, then you're starting to get into meetings, relationship mapping, organizational mapping, all of the B2B practices. The thing that with the more advanced marketing and with WeCom in particular that we can support them on with them is that ability to group send and to create more personalized information. So the more advanced teams are supporting their sales team with some Salesforce automation tools to help them understand the customer better, and to provide, and the most advanced, and they're actually really, some of the advanced tools in the US, these SFA tools, typically provide next best step for them, how to connect with the person next. And they also provide a lot of coaching and content for in the middle of conversations to how the salesperson can improve their, particularly newer salespeople can engage with their customer better. These tools are coming up in China, but they're not there yet. So this, I think SFA is a weak point in China's arsenal, although we are working on it. So we hope to have those tools out better.
Soon enough, soon enough.
Yeah.
No, that's beautiful. You've just now mentioned the phone number being, the first step, and calling people is the way. And even if the call is very, very quick, the goal is to get the WeChat. A lot of people in the West, for instance, believe that a phone call is kind of a thing in the past, and everybody's annoyed, and it's considered spam. What do you think is the sentiment when somebody is receiving a cold call in China today? Is there such a feeling, or there's no negative sentiment when it comes to this?
No, it's the same. It's the same, but it's again, it's just it's the incentives and their interest level in your particular product. Because if you are getting the right lists, or basically, because a lot of the ABM strategies, the industry specific strategies where you're looking at target industries, those industries, and a lot of times you're already working with some of their competitors. So that's really a big niche. They do want to know about what is going on in the industry, what are the latest trends for your product in your area. So we are finding that our outbound team is, in terms of final acquisition costs, is very, very competitive with the inbound costs. In fact, it's on par. So even though it is a little bit annoying to the people who aren't interested, the conversion rate on the calls is high enough that, in terms of and we do get enough response that it is an area that we're continuing to invest in and grow. Yeah.
Thank you. Let's take a look at the slightly different topics of just now. We've spoken about B2B in China and marketing automation. Let's look at the area where you are focusing right now, which is innovation. What's next in the China technology and digital space? What are the spaces that you're watching today? What's next in the China digital and tech?
Yeah, so same as everywhere, it's all about AI and generative AI, and there is lots of investment going on in this space, particularly from the government. So there's a lot of innovation centers that are being grown. Basically, each province has multiple innovation centers, and even city levels have innovation centers. And they have been tasked with growing the number of quality companies, particularly in new energy and AI. And so I was at a center outside of Suzhou with one of my team members, and we're talking with some of these areas, and they're very interested in supporting companies who are in these in these areas, and they have budgets to do so. And so there is a huge amount of companies, and so there is one of the interesting things is that when you talk about the LLMs and the big models, just unfortunately, like all of the other technologies, there is becoming two different universes and ecosystems. So the China ecosystem with your Baidu's Wenxin Yiyan model, Ernie model, and then with the models coming out of Alibaba and Huawei and Tencent. They're all in the game and moving forward, but you know, I guess it's about a month ago or 6 weeks ago, China really was the first country to put forward a draft of their AI law. It sort of builds upon some of the things that came out of, there was a version in Europe that has been under discussion about 2-3 years ago. And it sort of takes on these and expands upon it, but it's one of the most fully developed laws. And one of the couple of the interesting things on is that they got the law out fast is because in China, it's all about stability. And so they're very concerned about the effect and impact that these intelligence models will have on all facets of society. So even though there's this very interesting push and pull going, is that on the individual company level, that there is a major push to develop this technology and new companies coming up to leverage this technology, but on a really mass basis of opening these technologies to make it really easy and available to everyone, China is actually going very slow compared to what's happening in the US right now. So as an example, Baidu, they launched their Wenxin Yiyan model probably 3 months ago now. And at the time they launched it, they said that they would have the APIs available within a couple weeks. It didn't happen. So, OpenAI's APIs have been open for now probably a year now or more. They were not able to open them. Basically, what my assumption is that they got pressure from back channels that this, don't open them yet. And so now they still haven't opened them. Then you have to apply. So you have to be a pretty close Baidu partner, and you have to apply directly in order for them to open up the APIs. So they're just not generally available. And this is pretty much true with all of the LLM models if you want to use them directly as part of your platform or your software. So this is a big contrast to what's going on in the US right now. But there are different tool sets and applications that are coming out that are using these technologies, and a lot of the startups basically are going open source. So they're taking Facebook's model and rolling it and using that as a basis to roll out the technology, or they're using all of the different open source projects, AI projects to achieve the goals they're looking for, and also spinning up their own and training their own models. So I would say it is going very, very fast, but it's interesting that in getting the volume of user feedback that's happening, it's actually in some ways going slow. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens over the next couple months and year.
And when you're mentioning those innovation centers, because just now you've said a lot of innovation is actually kind of been pushed through these government innovation centers. Do you believe they are effective? Are they really creating impact? Because we know that there are a lot of, let's say, state-owned enterprises, and they are not particularly famous for their productivity and creating real-life impact. So when it comes to those innovation centers, what's your take?
Yeah, I think that's sort of universal. I think when there is relatively free money to be had. If you're able to start a company and sell the people running the centers on what your story is, then in any, I mean, the success of a VC is also actually not very high. So it's VC funded companies. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of it. I don't have enough information to really judge that, but I don't think it will be particularly any higher than what we've seen in the past, but I probably won't be any lower either. So they're definitely, we'll kind of see what happens with that.
And when it comes to the law, you've just now mentioned this AI law came out in China, and right now, as you said, the user feedback, right, that we are getting in China, and also some of the development is actually slower than, let's say, in the US. Do you think it will accelerate? Because previously China worked slightly differently, right? When in the West we were trying to, let's say, regulate blockchain before we really understood how to use it. China said, you know what, do whatever. And then once it reaches a certain level of clarity of what it is, then the regulations come in, and then, let's say cryptocurrencies are fully out of the country. So the regulation comes after the innovation. So right now with this AI law, it came much before. So do you think there will be some acceleration in innovation? There will be some avenues or applications where China will really have an advantage, or even potential to lead, or we're kind of seeing a new way for China to implement and innovate technology, which will be a little bit on the back foot, and just adapting it to the market and implementing it at scale? What will it look like?
Well, I mean, the thing about what, like, Sam Altman he did an interview a couple of weeks ago when he's talking about the challenges that OpenAI is facing right now. Because scaling up, particularly GPT-4, has been very difficult for them, because it is very GPU intensive. So they haven't been able. I mean, I have a pro account on ChatGPT, but it's still, after all these months, GPT-4 is still limited to 25 queries in 3 hours. And the reason is that they can't scale up the physical infrastructure, the GPUs, fast enough to deal with all of the demand that they have, because it is still highly GPU intensive to run the queries against it. But this is their probably short, medium-term challenge. But one of the things that he did say is that when he's thinking about the models, is that he says that they had seen no signs that the linear scaling of the capabilities of the models was decreasing. So basically, the more data you have, the bigger the training is, the better the model's going to be. And they haven't seen this level off, because we have that incredible point where the models are kind of crappy until they hit this inflection point at 13. Anyways, different emergent behaviors have different inflection points, but like, I think it's about for some of them, it's about 13 billion parameters. So whatever parameters means in terms of it's a lot of training. Then these being able to do math, being able to really complete text in a way that is somewhat creative, to be able to tell jokes, to be able to write poetry at a more sophisticated level. All of these things happen when they hit a certain size, and then it keeps on increasing. These emergent behaviors only came up at a certain size. And so when you think about China and its data, the amount of data and training and people and the speed and the size, the scale, if indeed the capabilities are not limited and will continue to scale linearly by the size of the training data, then it seems to me that there is not a reason why the models in China, particularly for the Chinese market, will be will be some of the best. And they have, in some of the technical research, some of the reports on some of their models has been very positive, and for some areas they're leading. The problem again is that it's a little bit hard for someone at our level who's just, you know, kind of the end of the chain user to actually verify this, because we don't have actually access to the models. So we can't, like, for me, I can test, like recently I did a test with doing unstructured call log from our SDR sales team, classifying their conversation or notes that they were leaving. And basically with GPT-4, you can give it like 5 logs, and it will come up with a classifying system for you. Here's all the tags that you should be using. And then you feed it, okay, here's this notes or this conversation, then tag this for me. And I just took the exact same parameters, the same classifications, put it in GPT 3.5, GPT-4, and the difference was huge. It was like GPT 3.5 was only able to successfully tag 3 out of 20. GPT-4 did 19 out of 20. So when you hit these scales, and when you need a certain level of model in order to really do some of the tasks that are going to be really useful for B2B, they'll be coming. I mean, GPT-4 can already do it in Chinese, no, for that matter. I was feeding it Chinese logs. And so, but it's a matter of we haven't had a chance to really test out the local models yet. But I assume if not now, within a short period of time, they should have these capabilities, which will be very exciting as we sort of expand the different things that we can do to really empower the marketing and B2B.
So how can this generative AI, in other words, be used in B2B businesses in China, let's say in the next 1 year, half a year? Like how far away are we, and what is this generative AI is actually going to be doing for B2B businesses in the country?
Well, just like in the US, it's already being used by businesses here at the marketing level, because there is, you know, a traditional AI project model. It was a very big investment, because we're talking $500,000, you know, hundreds of, in terms of dollars, we're talking, you know, minimum size. You're talking $300,000, $400,000 to $1 million to run an AI project with a team that's doing it. And so the traditional way of thinking about AI projects was, you know, evaluate all of your key business areas for potential, then look at your data set and evaluate your data set for it, and then, you know, define what is the key one area that we think is going to have the best impact, and then you run it, measure it, and then iterate on it. But it really was a very you had to be very careful, and it's like, let's do one project, AI project at a time. And I think with the ubiquity of these services now, and the abilities of basically of having intelligence at your fingertips and generative intelligence, it's really flipped the model of using AI. And so people basically are using it to improve their efficiency. And so any of the areas where generative AI is useful is being used. And you know, teams, particularly in marketing teams, work in China, they're very, as I said, entrepreneurial. So they have VPNs, and most of them are actually already using, whether it's Stable Diffusion or Midjourney, they're already using them, and they're using ChatGPT already to help with their creative, so with the copywriting. So that's when you are starting to empower people with generative AI. The thing is, it's not doing a top-down project anymore. It's doing a bottom-up empowerment of, let's see how we can empower all of our team members to go farther and faster. And so whether it's from the marketing team, where you can leverage them to, one of the cases that I've seen that I like is doing your SEM campaign strategy and ad writing, just setting up the parameters and you empowering it and you leveraging it to create all, because the main thing with particularly with SEM, that's annoying is all the variations of all the different ads, the A/B testing, all the different approaches. And it can pretty effectively, with some editing, create all of your SEM ads for you, and then even put it in basically a tabular CSV format, so you can upload it straight into Baidu. So that's a real easy win from at the top of the funnel, is helping it to help create some of your your advertising copy. And then from that, going into sort of the top of the funnel landing pages, having that copy ability and image creation ability is really amazing, because before, in stock photography, nice stock photography of very specific B2B industry capabilities just doesn't exist. There's nothing, because the market's not big enough. They're not going to shoot photos of basically attractive people in an industrial setting. It doesn't happen that much. In particular, add Asian people into that mix, and it's not out there. But with the, and particularly, I was just blown away because I just, last couple of days, I've been working with Midjourney, and in the last month or so, they've upgraded to their V5.1. And I had done some landing pages with V4 a couple of months ago, and the quality is again taken another leap up, where no more six-fingered people. They've solved that problem. Exactly. And all those faces and eyes on the wrong side, all those problems are gone. Not entirely gone. If you remix things and put variations, sometimes that happens, but it's, in general, it's so much better. And just the coherence and the alignment of the images with the text is just getting better and better and better. And so it allows us to, if you efficiently do it, you can really create really targeted industry-specific landing pages, and you combine the ability of the language models to create the copy and modify that copy for a particular industry, combined with images, and with so much less effort, you can be creating really targeted content and landing pages at a scale that was not really possible before for a small marketing team, which is what you have in China. So, and then, the other area that I think is very, very interesting is if you have these sort of data management and processing, particularly for unstructured text. So these call logs, these notes, a lot of this information, people have made it. A lot of times it's recorded in Excel sheets or other places, but you look at CRM, it's not in there. It never quite makes it into the system of record. And so, and I don't blame our team, because it's not easy. It's a little bit confusing. You have to think in a structured way. People don't think in a structured way. When they're writing notes about an account, they're telling a story, and they think of this, and they think of that, and they think of this. And the information is there in general for what we, as a company, as companies, what you want to know about your target or your prospect. But it's not in a format that's really usable for your CRM or your SCRM. But this is where these models and where this capability really comes in, is because you can take unstructured text, and it can, as I mentioned that example earlier, you give it the classifications. Here's the 20 tags, company, company interest, their industry, their product line, what their pain point is, and it will strip out, it'll identify all those points and then structure it into a JSON, a structured format, whatever you want. And then you can take that and then write a script, which of course you can ask GPT to write for you. You can ask GPT, write me a Python script to import this JSON into Salesforce, and it can write that script for you. And that's the other thing that I've been getting my hands on, because I'm not a coder. I came from design. I was a visual designer. I did direct mail. I've done, then I got into product, and I did HTML. So, but that's as close as I ever got to code. I never thought I would do real coding, and I still don't, but I work with my assistant GPT, and I've been exploring writing code. For this example I just gave you, it wrote the code to allow me to import this into the CRM. Because it's such it's like a coach, because basically if you just continue to ask the right questions, brush up on your questioning capabilities, it will answer those questions. And so when in coding, it's like I was trying to have it do some of this classification or some of this analysis, and it says it basically wasn't successful at it. And so I said, well, how should I do this? And it said, well, you should use Python or these other tools. And I said, okay, well, how do I use Python? And then it said, well, you should install these libraries. And I said, well, how do I install those libraries? Oh, you do this. And so without any knowledge and at great risk of my computer, I just went into terminal and started doing what it told me to do. And I was able to get Python working and write scripts and start to get this all working without, it's a little dangerous because I don't really know what it's doing. On some level, but it works. And that's the amazing thing, is that I think that when they talk about the democratization of computing and AI and coding, it's really happening, because you can have someone, as long as you have a clear understanding of what the problem is, and then understanding and that it is a good fit for a code type solution, the cost of coding and the ability for us to code is going to be decreasing so much over the next year that it's going to open up possibilities to do things that were before never possible, because you didn't have the team or the resources or the budget. The report released by GitHub Copilot, their report said that coding efficiency or speed increased by 55% for the average coder. So
already now.
Already now, if you use Copilot, it's already that effective. There was another report that came out a couple of weeks ago for one of the early adopters who was using generative AI for their customer service team for doing recommending replies, and it was able to increase resolution rate by 14%. And that's pretty good, because as an optimization, that's pretty much the sweet spot for any automation tool. If you can hit 15%, that's great. But the other thing it was able to do, it was able to get a new customer service agent to able to operate at a level of a trained agent, instead of within 6 months, within 2 months. So reducing, speed, 3 times, improving the onboarding speed of an agent by 3 times. That is what's really amazing. That's where the real value is, because what they also found in this report, that this generative AI for experienced agents, it didn't help them at all. There was no help to them at all, because it was trained on them, how they deal with calls. So it wasn't able to really suggest much that was of use to them. But for every one of the mid-level agents and the low new agents, it was able to help a great deal, which is, I think, a trend that we'll continue to see across all, because the same thing was true with coders, is that the best coders, it didn't really help them that much. It helped them some, but not that much. It reduced, but the lower level
They just
coders,
created more competition for themselves by allowing the algorithm to train everybody else, and faster.
And faster and faster. Yeah, it is true. It's true. But
this is the way.
But I think, particularly when you think, so I think of when that whole account or customer life cycle, there's so many tactics along that whole range. And basically, when you're operating, whether you are, marketing team or the customer success team or the customer service team, or you're the sales team, you have basically, I think what's going to be really interesting is, and what companies are going to be doing, is training up all of the teams, coming up with a standard tool set and range of things that they think generative AI is good for, and then training and empower the teams to try things, because it's going to be the front level guys who really know the problems, and now they can, with generative AI, they can actually solve their own problems. You don't have to wait for the IT team to come solve your problem. And so that's what's going to be really interesting, is that it's going to be, technology is going to be democratized within organizations to allow people to solve your own problem and solve your own technical problems, which it's still a bit hazy. But I think, like, going back to the traditional approach for a big AI project when you're with a major organization versus the generative AI approach, I think that's where it's going to really change, is because we can really put these tools in everyone's hands and allow them to find the case that where it fits the best, where it can help scratch their own itch.
Yeah, as many people, as many problems, right? And as long as you give a person a tool which is easy enough to use, which is, you just need to ask the right questions. Just need to ask the right questions and follow the steps. I think that's where the power truly is. Aaron, one last question before we finish today. Such an insightful session. We've spoken about B2B and marketing automation tools. We've just now discussed what's next in the tech and digital space in China, and generative AI in particular. You've also mentioned that new energy is a big topic in the country. But looking at where China is going with its digital push and where the world is going, in particular, let's say the West, the collective West, also including the US, right? There were talks about complete decoupling, and right now we're calling it de-risking. What is actually happening within those tech ecosystems? Are they completely different? Is there still at one point an opportunity to build a bridge or to merge the two together? There's been some positive developments recently with Blinken and Xi meeting on the 20th of June. So what's your take on the whole ecosystem developing independently or connecting at one point, China and the rest of the world?
That is the $1 million question. Of course, up until recently, the last number of years, it's all been news in a single direction about de-risking, decoupling. And in terms of tech ecosystems, I think AI is the one that has broken across, because a lot of the AI researchers are actually Chinese. So when you look through archive and looking through all the papers, there's Chinese researchers who are all over AI. So it is going on both sides of on both sides of the wall. It is going on, and there still is a fair amount of sharing, and but because of. But I don't see, particularly with the, China is, even though it is its own ecosystem, there is platforms which affect social stability. And when anything that is going to affect social stability, then I believe that in China, it's going to be China owned. Period. There's no sign, and there's no reason for that will change, or there's no indication that they would want to do anything else, because just because the scale of China, unlike a lot of countries, it truly is a market and that is big enough to be entirely self-reliant in terms of technology development and many other things. It might not be able to lead, as the challenges they've had with their semiconductor initiatives. They put a lot of money into it over the last 5 years, and they have not had the breakthrough at the cutting edge level. But one thing I think that is the one at the kind of second and third tier semiconductors, though, they are actually I think they're one of the major producers now of sort of the less sophisticated semiconductors. So it'll happen. and whether or not they will, it's kind of like in the Cold War, that'll be sort of different levels of détente, I feel like, is that there will continue to be, hopefully it will start opening up again, because I think that we're starting to realize that there is severe economic implications for forcing such a de-risking on companies. And that's a number of my some companies, some friends who run, I have a friend who runs a flooring company. And 3 years ago, 95% of his production happened in China. 3 years later, he was early to understand the challenges of what was going to happen. And so now his production is only 45% is left in China. So in 3 years, he's already moved a huge mass of his production out. And then we're seeing that across a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of industries, that they won't necessarily. So the interesting thing is that his production level in China has not decreased that much, because it's just he's been growing. So, but it's cut a little bit, but just all of the additional capacity was put outside of China. And so it is that it is happening. It is going to happen that that's going to continue. There's really no sign, and that's I see that's going to be discontinuing. And so in terms of companies that dealing with, we're a truly global company, it's just going to continue to add to the complexity of running China as China. I mean, one of the big things, Sequoia, the big VC, they restructured and split into, I believe, 4 pieces, or 3 or 4 pieces, and their China investments, they split off entirely. It's its own entity. They want to wall it off, and I think that's really what's happening. And in terms of, because of all the cybersecurity laws, personal information protection laws, operationally, companies, in essence, because digital is such at the core of what's happening with businesses these days, and with those laws, if you want to take the least risk in terms of China risk, you have to do everything, you have to wall it off. It has to be walled off inside of China. And that's what we're seeing most of our customers do. So you really will have two ecosystems that will be running simultaneously. And that trend, I don't really see that trend stopping.
So de-risking will continue happening, and the operational challenges in China and continue walling off your China operations and operating country for the country is probably going to continue. Meanwhile, there are some mildly positive signs of warming up. Hopefully they will also develop. Aaron, thank you very much for today. Guys, do check out Aaron and JINGdigital on LinkedIn and on other platforms. We're going to drop the links to their website below this video. Do connect with him to chat about marketing automation in the country, B2B sales funnels, and of course, technology. Aaron, thank you so very much. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Ashley. Great fun.
And guys, stay tuned for more Ashley's Digital China episodes to come. Have a great week.